I want you to visualize a specific moment. It's a moment everyone listening has experienced, probably within the last 24 hours. You are sitting at your desk. You have a task in front of you.
Yeah.
Something important, something that actually moves the needle on your career or your life.
Right.
You have the coffee. You have the time. You have the intention.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't do it. You pick up your phone. You open a new tab. You reorganize your bookshelf.
The classic loop. You think, I'll just do this one quick thing first, and suddenly it's 2 hours later.
Exactly. And usually the story we tell ourselves in the aftermath is just brutal. We say, I'm lazy, I lack discipline, or I'm just a procrastinator. We internalize it as this massive moral failing.
Yes, we do.
But the premise we are exploring today, which is based on the death of procrastination framework from the book The Dopamine Architect, suggests that this entire narrative is wrong.
It's a bold stance, but biologically it is the only one that actually holds up under scrutiny. The premise here is that procrastination is not a character flaw. It's a structural design flaw of the modern brain operating in a hypermodern environment.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We aren't here to offer you, 5 hacks to work faster or tell you to buy a colorful planner. We are looking at the machinery under the hood. We are talking about actual neural rewiring today. And to help me navigate the clinical side of the sources, I'm joined by Dr. Elena Thorne, a neuropsychologist whose work on executive function provides the clinical backbone for these theories. Dr. Thorne, welcome.
Thank you. It is good to be here to dissect this.
Let's just start with the why. If we aren't lazy, why do we stall? Why does the brain, which is supposedly the most advanced computer on the planet, choose a 15-second video of a cat over a project that could double our income?
Because the brain is an efficiency machine. It's not a success machine. It evolved to conserve energy and seek immediate rewards. To really understand the stalling mechanism, we have to look at the fuel that drives action, which is dopamine.
Right.
But we have to be highly specific here. In the source text, there's a distinction made between two very different types: anticipatory dopamine versus achievement dopamine.
Yeah, and I think most people just lump all dopamine into one bucket. They just think, dopamine equals pleasure. But you're saying the actual type of dopamine dictates the behavior.
Precisely. This is the crux of the entire issue. Anticipatory dopamine is what you get from the scroll. It's driven by what neuroscientists call prediction error.
Prediction error.
Yes. You swipe your thumb and your brain goes, what's next? Is it good news? Is it funny? Is it shocking? It is the anticipation of a reward, not the reward itself.
Wow.
And it is high frequency, but crucially, it is extremely low friction.
Meaning you don't have to work for it. The cost of entry is essentially zero.
Exactly. The metabolic cost is a thumb twitch. Now you compare that to achievement dopamine. This is the neurochemical payoff you get after you finish a difficult report or complete a heavy workout or finally clean the garage.
It's a deeper, more sustained satisfaction.
It is, but, and here's the design flaw we mentioned, the brain discounts future rewards heavily.
So the brain looks at the 5-minute task and sees high effort, delayed reward. And then it looks at the phone and sees 0 effort, instant reward.
And it creates a path of least resistance. We have essentially trained our biological systems to be allergic to friction. Look, in a natural, primitive environment, this was a survival mechanism. You don't waste precious calories chasing a gazelle you might not catch when there are berries right in front of you.
Right.
But in the digital age, the berries are infinite, they're sugar-coated, and they are constantly available.
This leads to a specific sensation I want to drill down on, because everyone listening knows this feeling. It's that moment where you are staring at the screen, knowing you should work, but it feels like there is a literal physical wall between you and the task.
Yes.
It's not just a lack of desire. It feels almost magnetic, like a force field pushing you away from the keyboard.
That sensation is clinically real. It's not in your head. Well, it is in your head, literally. In neuropsychology, we call this limbic friction.
Limbic friction. That sounds intense. Let's unpack that for the listener.
So you have the limbic system. That is the ancient, emotional, primitive part of the brain. It controls the fight or flight response, and it fundamentally craves safety, comfort, and immediate pleasure.
Okay.
Then you have the prefrontal cortex. Think of that as the CEO of the brain, the logic center. When you sit down to do hard work, the prefrontal cortex says, we need to execute this task for our long-term goals.
Makes sense.
But if your system is overstimulated, say, if you've been flooding it with cheap dopamine all morning from your phone, the limbic system screams, No, that requires effort. That's boring. Look at this shiny thing instead.
And I'm guessing the limbic system is louder.
Much louder. It completely overrides the logic center. We call this a prefrontal cortex override. It creates a literal stress response in the body. When you try to force yourself to work against high limbic friction, you are chemically fighting yourself.
You're at war with your own biology.
Precisely. This state is called executive dysfunction. You literally cannot issue the command to your body to take action.
And this is where the shame cycle usually kicks in. You sit there, paralyzed, and you interpret that chemical override as, I am broken. You think, why can't I just do it?
Correct. You are trying to fight a chemical fire with a philosophical water pistol. You are trying to willpower your way out of a state where your neurochemistry is completely imbalanced toward cheap stimulation.
It's impossible.
It is. You cannot think your way out of a problem that is caused by your biology being hijacked. You need a structural intervention.
Which brings us to the core argument of the dopamine architect. If procrastination is a structural failure, a hardware problem, then we need a structural solution. We can't just try harder. We need to change the environment. In the book, I introduced the concept of the circuit breaker technique.
Which is a very apt metaphor. When a circuit in your house overheats, the breaker trips to stop the flow of energy to prevent a fire. We need to do the exact same thing for the brain's dopamine loop.
Yeah. The core of the circuit breaker is the 48-hour reset. Now, I've seen people react to this with pure panic when they first read it. The idea is to spend 48 hours systematically starving the distractions. No social media, no streaming, no video games, no cheap entertainment. We strip the environment down to the absolute essentials.
It sounds extreme to people because we are addicted. And I use that word clinically. If you take a heavy coffee drinker and cut off their caffeine, they get headaches and irritability. If you take a modern brain and cut off digital hyperstimulation, you get agitation, boredom, and even anxiety.
But in this context, that boredom isn't a side effect, it's actually the medicine.
It is the mechanism of action. You are resetting the baseline. Think of your dopamine receptors like listeners in a crowded, noisy nightclub. If the music is blaring, that's your social media, your notifications, your fast-paced video edits, your receptors become deaf.
They shut down.
They desensitize to protect themselves. So when you try to do quiet work, like writing a document or studying, the brain can't hear the reward. It feels numb.
It's like trying to listen to a whisper at a rock concert. You just can't pick up the signal at all.
Exactly. By removing the superstimuli for 48 hours, you clear out the room, you turn off the music, you resensitize the receptors. Suddenly, normal life starts to register again.
I love the analogy used in the source material about food. If you eat candy all day, an apple tastes like cardboard. It has zero flavor. But if you fast from sugar for 24 hours, that apple tastes incredibly sweet.
That is exactly what happens in the brain. You are manipulating the relative value of the task. By removing the anticipatory dopamine triggers, you force the brain to look for dopamine elsewhere.
Anywhere it can find it.
Yes. Eventually, the brain realizes that the only source of reward available is the work itself. You start finding pleasure in difficulty because the alternative is staring at a white wall.
And the brain hates boredom more than it hates effort.
Much more. The default mode network, which is the part of the brain active when we aren't focused on a task, can be a very uncomfortable place for people who are used to constant distraction. It forces introspection.
So it looks for a distraction, even if it's work.
Yes, the brain will grab onto almost any task, even doing taxes, just to escape the silence.
So the 48-hour reset isn't a punishment. It's about making the work the most interesting thing in the room by default. It lowers the bar for what feels engaging.
Yes. You are tilting the playing field in your favor so that the path of least resistance actually becomes the path of value.
Now, I want to drill deeper into the mechanics of this, because this is where the death of procrastination really happens. Dr. Thorne, in my research for the dopamine architect, I found that willpower is effectively a finite resource.
Yes.
We wake up with a full battery, and every decision drains it. My question is this: how does our 48-hour protocol help recharge that biological battery of willpower? Because, logically, avoiding distractions takes more willpower, not less. Wouldn't you deplete the battery just trying to get through the reset?
That is the paradox, but the science supports the protocol entirely. We need to talk about neuroplasticity and dopamine baseline regulation.
Okay, let's get into it.
Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to physically change its connections based on what we do and what we don't do. Every time you successfully resist an urge, you are strengthening a neural pathway. But more importantly, the 48-hour protocol lowers the threshold for stimulation.
Meaning the actual cost of operation goes down.
Precisely. Think of willpower as a currency. When your dopamine baseline is high, when you are overstimulated, the cost to switch tasks from a high dopamine activity like scrolling online to a low dopamine activity like a spreadsheet is incredibly expensive.
The gap is just too wide.
Yes, you have to pay a massive amount of willpower currency to bridge that gap.
Because the drop in stimulation is so severe, it feels like jumping off a cliff.
Exactly. But when you lower the baseline through this reset, the cost to engage in work drops significantly. The gap between your resting state and the work state becomes very small. So you aren't necessarily recharging the battery in the sense of adding more power. You're making everything cheaper to buy.
That is a massive paradigm shift. We aren't trying to become stronger. We are trying to make the work lighter on a neurological level.
Yes. And this effectively bypasses the amygdala. The amygdala is the threat detection center. When a task feels overwhelming, the amygdala fires a fear response. This is too hard, this is unsafe, retreat.
Right.
By lowering the stimulation baseline, the task appears less threatening. It feels more manageable. You essentially sneak past the guard dog.
So we use the circuit breaker to reset the system, to lower the cost of effort. But obviously, we can't live in a 48-hour reset forever. We have jobs, families, obligations. We have to operate in the real world where the internet exists. We need a way to maintain this state.
Right. The reset is the acute intervention. It stops the bleeding. But you need a system for rehabilitation and daily maintenance.
Which leads us to the action architecture, specifically the tool called the action grid. Now, at first glance, this just looks like a calendar or a to-do list. But the source materials is very adamant about this. A to-do list is actually an anxiety generator.
I see this clinically all the time. A to-do list is just a menu of things you haven't done yet. It represents an open loop, and the brain absolutely hates open loops.
It wants closure.
Always. It constantly scans the list, worrying about what it's forgetting. It consumes energy just holding the list in your working memory.
The action grid is different because it uses spatial organization. It forces you to visualize your day like an architect looks at a blueprint. It's a grid system where time and energy are mapped spatially.
From a neuropsychological standpoint, spatial organization is processed completely differently than linguistic lists. A list is abstract and endless. A grid is concrete. It's finite. It has hard boundaries.
I want to bring up David, a case study I discussed in a previous deep dive. David was a high-level executive, incredibly smart, but totally paralyzed by the sheer volume of his responsibilities. He was stuck in what we call analysis paralysis.
Very common.
He would sit at his desk for 10 hours and do maybe 90 minutes of real work.
Analysis paralysis is a classic symptom of executive overload. The brain cannot prioritize because everything on the list looks equally loud. Email the client and write the strategy document look exactly the same on a piece of paper. So the brain shuts down to conserve energy.
When David started using the action grid, he wasn't just listing tasks. He was assigning them to specific coordinates in his day. He had to physically write down where the energy was going. It stopped being, I need to do this sometime, and became, this happens in block A.
By doing that, you are offloading the cognitive load. You see, the action grid acts as an external prefrontal cortex. Instead of your brain trying to hold the plan and execute the plan simultaneously, the paper holds the plan.
The paper becomes the prefrontal cortex. That completely validates why the analog nature of the grid is so important. We recommend doing this with pen and paper, not an app. Why does the physical act of writing matter so much here?
It involves enclosed cognition. The tactile engagement grounds the intention. When you physically write it down, your brain registers it as a hard commitment. But more importantly, because the grid creates a rigid visual structure, it removes the choice element. Procrastination thrives on choice. Should I do this now or later? Should I answer email or write the report?
The negotiation. That is exactly where we lose the battle. We wake up and start negotiating with ourselves immediately. I'll just get coffee first, then I'll check messages, then I'll start.
Exactly. The grid says, no, you do this right here, right now. It removes the negotiation entirely. The decision was already made by you, the architect, the night before. Now you are just the builder. You are just laying the bricks.
That distinction between the architect and the builder is huge. The architect version of you is smart, logical, and forward-thinking. The builder you, the one who wakes up Tuesday morning, is tired, emotional, and seeking dopamine.
And you never want the builder making strategic decisions. The builder just needs a blueprint. If you force the builder to design the house while trying to build it, they will just sit on the pile of bricks and look at their phone.
So let's look at the full picture here. We have identified the structural design flaw. which is our addiction to anticipatory dopamine-causing limbic friction. We have the circuit breaker, the 48-hour reset to starve the distractions and lower the cost of effort. And we have the action grid, the tool to maintain focus and eliminate decision fatigue.
It is a complete ecosystem. You cannot just have the tool without the reset, because if your baseline is too high, you simply won't have the willpower to stick to the grid.
Right.
And you cannot have the reset without the understanding of the biology, or you'll just feel like you're punishing yourself for no reason.
Dr. Thorne, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave the listener with something to chew on. We've talked a lot about taking control. But what happens if they don't? What is the real cost of not doing this reset?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to understand that there are thousands of engineers, data scientists, and psychologists on the other side of your screen. Their entire job, their livelihood, depends on hijacking your dopamine system. They are A/B testing the exact shade of red on notification bubbles. They are optimizing the scroll speed to keep you hooked.
It isn't accidental. It's highly engineered.
It is predatory. If you do not design your dopamine intake, someone else will design it for you. And they are not designing it for your success or your happiness. They are designing it for their profit. They are mining your attention as a raw resource.
That is the reality. You are in a war for your own attention, and currently, most people are losing.
It is not a fair fight unless you change the rules of engagement. That is what this protocol does. It changes the rules, it takes the weapon out of their hands and puts it back in yours.
Now, we have covered the concepts here, but the execution is where it actually counts. The exact step-by-step protocol for the procrastination circuit breaker, including what you can and cannot do during those 48 hours to avoid failure, and the printable template for the action grid, are not things we can fully convey in audio. These are precision tools, and they need to be used correctly.
Especially the circuit breaker. If you do it wrong, or if you cheat on the protocol, you just end up frustrated. The structure really matters. You need to know how to handle the withdrawal triggers when they hit.
Exactly. These tools are only available in the full ebook, The Dopamine Architect. It contains the actual blueprint to implement everything we just discussed. If you are serious about killing procrastination and taking ownership of your neural pathways, you need to get the book.
It's the difference between knowing how a car works and actually driving it.
The link to join the Dopamine Architect Club and get the ebook is right there in the channel bio. Don't let the moment pass. Don't let the friction stop you. Go to the bio, get the blueprint, and start the reset. Dr. Thorne, thank you for breaking this down with me today.
It was a pleasure. The science is clear. The rest is up to you.
You heard the expert. Check the link in the bio. We'll see you on the inside.